Welcome to our deep dive into Joe Boaler's Limitless Mind. You shared some really interesting excerpts, and we're going to dig into those key takeaways. Get ready to kind of rethink what you thought you knew about learning and all that.
I think Limitless Mind really kind of challenges how we think about intelligence. Bowler does a fantastic job of bringing together brain science and real-world examples. It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And right away, she just dives into this whole myth of fixed intelligence. There's this crazy fact I never knew, get this, math anxiety actually triggers the same fear response in your brain as snakes or spiders.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. Isn't it? Our brains are wild. That fear response, it can actually block our ability to, solve problems. It's almost as if our brains are, going into fight or flight mode instead of, trying to think clearly.
Wow, that's so interesting. So does that mean we're not just, born good or bad at math?
Exactly. It's not like you're just stuck with a certain level of math ability. Bowler really digs into this idea of neuroplasticity, which basically means, our brains are constantly changing, rewiring themselves, forming new connections all the time. And that just blows the whole fixed mindset idea out of the water.
That's incredible. So, our potential is always evolving.
Totally. And there are so many examples of this in the book. Remember the story about Steve Falloon, this ordinary guy who, trained his memory to recall over 80 digits? I mean, if he can do that, just imagine what else is possible.
Right. If he can do that, we all can. So, okay, our brains are capable of crazy things, but how do we actually, tap into that potential? How do we get that limitless mind going?
Well, Bowler really emphasizes the importance of adopting what she calls a growth mindset. It's all about believing that intelligence can be developed, that your abilities aren't set in stone,
Okay, so instead of saying, I'm terrible at math, I should be saying,
maybe something like, I'm still learning math, or, I'm going to keep practicing. That kind of shift in language shows that you believe in your ability to grow and improve.
I like that. It's a much more positive way to think about it. She also talks about this study at Columbia University. It was about female students and how they were exposed to these stereotypes about women in math. And it turns out the ones with a fixed mindset, they were more likely to give up when things got tough.
Yeah, and it's so powerful, right? The women with a growth mindset, though, they just kept going. They saw the challenge as an opportunity to learn rather than proof that they weren't good enough. Their belief in their ability to grow, it made all the difference.
It really makes you think, you know? How many times have we limited ourselves because of that fixed mindset thinking? Have you ever caught yourself doing that?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all fall into those thought patterns sometimes.
Yeah.
But the important thing is to, recognize them and challenge them.
Totally. And Bowler even mentions how something as simple as, a teacher saying, I believe in you, can have a huge impact on the student's performance.
It's incredible how much our words can influence others, isn't it? It really highlights the responsibility we have as educators and parents and mentors. We need to foster that growth mindset in others. And it all starts with examining our own beliefs and how we talk about things.
Yeah, she also makes a big point about praising effort and strategies instead of just praising kids for being smart.
Right, because when we praise effort, we're encouraging a love of learning. That willingness to stick with it even when things get tough.
But isn't struggle a sign that we're, doing something wrong?
Not at all. Bowler actually argues that mistakes are essential for learning. She explains how when we make mistakes, our brains are actually forming new connections. Struggle is like a sign that your brain is growing.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. She uses that great example of a young musician. What was her name? Clarissa,
yeah. She's learning to play the clarinet. And Bowler describes how Clarissa makes tons of mistakes. But each time, she corrects herself and gets a little bit better.
Yeah, I remember that. It's such a good example of how we learn by doing, by trying things out, making mistakes, and figuring out how to, do better next time.
Exactly. That's the heart of what she calls deliberate practice. Pushing past your comfort zone and seeing challenges as opportunities to, grow.
That makes so much sense. And it applies to anything we want to learn, right?
Yeah.
Like playing an instrument, solving math problems, or even just learning a new skill at work. It's all about embracing the process.
Absolutely. It's about seeing learning as a journey. And it's interesting. Bowler doesn't hold back when it comes to critiquing the education system itself. She points out that schools that group students by ability, tracking, they actually underperform.
What? Really? That's so counterintuitive.
It is, isn't it? But think about the message it sends to those students. This is your level. This is as far as you can go. that just totally limits their beliefs about their own potential.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember she shares that success story about the San Francisco Unified School District. They decided to get rid of advanced classes until 11th grade. And guess what happened? Algebra failure rates went way down.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you remove those artificial barriers and just let kids learn. And more students ended up taking higher level math too. It really challenges that whole idea that some students are just like gifted while others aren't.
Right. It's not about being gifted. It's about having the opportunity and the right mindset to learn and grow.
Exactly. And, Bowler also talks about the harm of those fixed mindset messages that sometimes come from, well, teachers themselves, like those teachers who kind of pride themselves on having super hard classes where only a few students succeed.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean. It's almost as if they're using difficulty as a measure of their own, effectiveness, but they're not even considering how that affects the student's self-belief.
Right. It's like they've forgotten that their job is to help all students learn and grow, not just weed out the best ones.
So it doesn't have to be that way. There's a better way.
Definitely. Bowler encourages all of us, whether we're students, parents, educators, or just, lifelong learners, to advocate for a more growth-oriented learning environment. We can all be part of creating a world where everyone feels empowered to learn and grow.
And she has all these inspiring stories of people who overcame incredible obstacles, right? Like there was Dylan Lynn. She was diagnosed with dyscalculia, but she ended up earning a degree in statistics.
Oh, yeah. Dylan's story is amazing.
Yeah.
And then there's Maryam Mirzakhani. She was actually told she wasn't good at math, but then she went on to become the first woman to win the Fields Medal, the highest honor in mathematics.
Wow. That's incredible. Talk about defying expectations. And of course, there's J.K. Rowling, who faced tons of rejections for Harry Potter before becoming one of the most successful authors in history.
I love those stories. They really show what's possible when you have perseverance and believe in yourself.
They're a powerful reminder that, setbacks happen, but they don't have to define us.
Exactly. And sometimes those setbacks can actually make us stronger and more resilient in the long run. They can even lead us to unexpected paths and incredible discoveries.
So what's the main message we should take away from these stories?
I think it's the power of perseverance, self-belief, and that willingness to embrace challenges. Those are the qualities that allow us to tap into our limitless potential, no matter what obstacles we might face. It's kind of wild how much our beliefs about ourselves can actually shape our reality. Bowler actually spends a whole chapter talking about the work of Carol Dweck. She's this researcher who's done groundbreaking work on mindsets.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of her. She's the one who talks about how our beliefs about intelligence, whether we think it's fixed or if it can grow, can actually affect how we learn.
Exactly. And Dweck's research shows that people with a growth mindset, they're way more likely to embrace challenges, and they just keep going even when things get tough. But those with that fixed mindset, they tend to shy away from difficulty.
So telling kids they're smart might actually be doing them a disservice in the long run.
It can, yeah. Because it kind of encourages them to focus on looking smart.
Right.
Rather than actually learning and growing. And then when they inevitably hit a roadblock, they start to doubt themselves.
It's like they think, oh, I guess I'm not that smart after all.
Exactly. But when you praise effort and strategies and persistence, that's when they develop a love for learning and that resilience that'll help them throughout their lives.
That makes sense. Bowler even highlights how these mindsets can affect our personal relationships and just our overall well-being. If you're always comparing yourself to others and being super hard on yourself, it's going to mess with how you feel.
Totally. It creates so much unnecessary stress and anxiety. But when you have a growth mindset, you're more open to new experiences, you're more compassionate toward yourself and everyone around you, and you're more likely to take those healthy risks that can lead to amazing things.
Speaking of taking risks, Bowler really pushes back against this idea that speed equals intelligence, especially in math. Oh man, those timed tests. Talk about stress.
I know, right? They're the worst. Time tests can actually be so detrimental to learning because, they trigger that whole fight or flight response, and that basically shuts down our ability to think clearly. You just can't access your working memory properly.
It's like you're so focused on the clock, you can't even think straight, let alone, actually engage with the material.
Exactly. And Bowler points out that this whole emphasis on speed, it often prioritizes memorization over that deep understanding.
So what's the alternative? If it's not about speed, then what should we be focusing on?
Well, she argues that we should shift our focus to deep thinking, flexibility, and conceptual understanding. It's more about understanding the why behind the what, not just memorizing a bunch of formulas.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely guilty of trying to memorize things instead of truly understanding them. She also makes a really strong case for the power of collaboration. I remember she mentions a study where African-American calculus students were allowed to collaborate, and they actually outperformed peers who had been considered more advanced.
It's incredible, right? Collaboration creates this environment where students can actually share their ideas and ask questions without feeling, judged. They can actually learn from each other's strengths.
And it's not just good for students either. Think about how much more we could accomplish in the workplace if we focused on collaboration instead of competition.
Oh, absolutely. When we combine our diverse perspectives and skills, the possibilities are endless, really.
This reminds me of something else Bowler talks about multidimensional learning. It's like engaging with information through different senses and representations, like visuals, stories, even movement. You're basically activating different parts of your brain.
Yeah. It's about making those connections.
Yeah.
And creating this richer, more interconnected understanding of what you're learning. She even talks about how our fingers play a crucial role in understanding math.
Wait, really? I thought finger counting was just for, little kids.
Turns out, even when we're not actually using our fingers, our brains still activate that finger representation area during calculations.
Wow. I never knew that. So those early finger-related activities are actually building important neural pathways for math learning.
Exactly. And, multidimensional learning is great because it taps into different learning styles and just helps us create more lasting memories.
It's like you're giving your brain all these different ways to access the information. And she also talks about the importance of creating a growth zone, right? A space where you feel safe to take risks and make mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. And it can be anywhere, like at home, at school, at work.
Yeah, I'm thinking about those classrooms where students are so afraid to ask questions because they don't want to look dumb,
I think we really need to shift that culture. Mistakes should be seen as opportunities for learning.
Totally. But that takes creating a supportive environment, right? Both at school and at home.
Absolutely. We need to create those spaces where people feel encouraged to experiment and try new things. It's okay to fail. That's where real learning happens.
It's amazing how much our environment and the messages we get really affect how we learn. You mentioned Bowler talking about stereotype threat, and I'd love to kind of dig into that a little more.
Oh yeah, stereotype threat is it's basically when people are aware of these negative stereotypes about their groove, and then that awareness actually makes them perform worse, because of that anxiety and self-doubt it creates.
So it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe the stereotype, you end up kind of conforming to it.
It's more like the pressure of it, the fear of confirming that stereotype. It just takes up so much mental energy that it actually interferes with their ability to perform their best. And this isn't just limited to academics either. It can apply to any area where there are these negative stereotypes floating around.
That's so disheartening to think about. But it also shows just how important it is to create those supportive environments.
Yeah.
Where people can actually learn and grow without that weight on their shoulders.
Totally. And Bowler talks about the importance of having that growth zone, remember, that space where you feel safe to, take risks and make mistakes and learn from them. And it can be anywhere, like at home, at school, at work, wherever.
It makes me think about how much emphasis we put on competition in our society. It feels like we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, and that just fuels so much anxiety and self-doubt. And ultimately, it hinders our ability to learn and grow.
I know, right? It's such a trap. Bowler really argues that we need to shift our focus from competition to collaboration. Imagine creating environments where people feel safe to share ideas, and learn from each other's strengths and just support each other's growth.
Yeah, and isn't that where the best ideas come from, when we're working together and bouncing ideas off each other?
Exactly. That's where the real innovation happens.
But is competition always a bad thing? Doesn't it also push us to, strive for excellence and kind of push our boundaries?
It's not necessarily about getting rid of competition altogether. I think it's more about reframing it. Instead of competing against each other, what if we competed against ourselves? Trying to be better than we were yesterday. And then we can collaborate with others, share our knowledge and skills, and just help everyone succeed.
That's such a cool way to think about it. So it's more about shifting our mindset and recognizing that we can all benefit from that collaborative approach. But how do we actually make this happen in real life? It seems like such a big shift,
I know. It's a challenge for sure. But, Bowler actually lays out some really practical steps. She talks about, remember those 6 key takeaways we discussed earlier?
Oh, yeah.
It's about embracing that brain plasticity, seeing those mistakes as opportunities for growth, fostering that growth mindset, approaching learning in that multidimensional way, cultivating flexible thinking, and of course, embracing collaboration.
Right. And those aren't just for learning in school, right? Those are like life lessons.
Absolutely. They apply to every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
It's like an ongoing process of learning and growth.
I love that. So it sounds like developing that limitless mind is like this lifelong journey. It's about constantly learning and pushing our boundaries and being open to those new experiences.
It really is. And it's also about being kind to ourselves.
Yeah.
Recognizing that we're all works in progress.
Yeah. And celebrating those wins along the way.
Exactly.
Well, this has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, and I've gained a whole new perspective on learning and like my own potential. What about you?
Yeah, me too. I've definitely had some aha moments, especially about how much our beliefs can either limit us or empower us. It's been a great reminder to, keep pushing myself and to create those growth zones for myself and others.
That's fantastic. So if you could give our listeners just one message to take away from this whole deep dive, what would it be?
I'd say, remember that you have limitless potential. Don't let past experiences or labels hold you back. You are capable of so much more than you might think, and it's never too late to learn and grow.
That's such an inspiring message. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Limitless Mind. And to our listeners, keep pushing those boundaries and unlocking your own potential. We'll see you next time.